Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us here today. Today, I'm being joined by Oscar Rivas, employment law attorney, Carmen Torres, human resource specialist, and Gabriela Soto, who is a leadership and management consultant. And we're here today to have a conversation about embracing the remote worker. And we called it Embracing the Remote Worker 2.0 because we had the first conversation. And when thinking about remote work, it's very easy to just get caught up in the compliance, human resources, and a lot of the reasons of why it isn't doable or why it isn't practical. But the reality at this moment is that, we believe remote work is here to stay and is only going to be expanding. It's good for increasing and elevating the lifestyle of a team member in terms of quality, gets vehicles off the road. It also reduces overhead, less real estate that needs to be occupied by an operation or a business. Now, not all businesses are able to embrace remote work at the level that is possible. If you're a restaurant, you're limited. Food needs to get served on those tables, and that's not something that can be outsourced to another state or another country. So there are some limitations, but there are administrative roles, or depending on your field or industry, if you're in professional services, where remote work can more easily be embraced. It's a conversation that we started with Oscar and Carmen some time ago. And then we realized that in order for it to expand, we needed to look at leadership and engage and look at it from a leadership and management standpoint inside of what's possible. And that's what we invited Gavi Soto with us today to join us, because why would an organization want to embrace remote team members in the first place?
In the first place, most organizations incorporate this new model. For a lot of us, this model of remote work began with the COVID era, the pandemic. Some of us work remotely even before. We used to use Skype. I don't know, some might be familiar or other systems at that time. But the main purpose is to create an amazing lifestyle for the team members, for the employees. And when that is possible and is achievable. There are many cons and many pros of remote work. And that is why we are having this conversation together. Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. Thank you, Gabi. And, from a compliance, human resource, employment law level, it's pretty easy to approach it, right? You could work with an attorney like Oscar or a human resource consultant like Carmen to help you stay within compliance. The bigger picture I'm seeing is like, how does leadership and management get to see and team members get to create those relationships that are profitable, sustainable, and they're also measurable, right? The one of the things that happens is like somebody's working from home and the thought is, are they really working? And you could have, technology shadow the computers and all of that, but then there's a level of micromanagement. So Gabi, what are some of the things that you see, like from a leadership, management, performance level, some of the agreements or understandings that make that a win-win relationship possible?
So I love that you are bringing that, because there are agreements at the level of law and explicit agreements. And at the level of human relationships, the remote work brings many same challenges that we have when we are physically together, but at the same time, it makes those issues or concerns deeper, and is completely related with the style of leadership. If you are used to manage your team and your employees, and what gives you confidence is like if they are in front of you, you know what they are doing, and there are certain office hours, and you see them in front of the desk. If you're used to that, it's imperative that you the leaders, the owners, the managers, the supervisors create like a new mindset, and where performance is managed. So the team is managed by performance. It's not managed by the presence in front of the computer. We all know by now that meaning Like if you can be sitting in the computer from 8 to 5, from 9 to 6, or the amount of hours that you need to be sitting in front of the computer, not all those hours are the same level of production. It doesn't mean that you are achieving something that will move forward the conversation that matters in the company. So it's important that leadership with the team members begins to create new conversations. So one of the tools is managing by performance. Like when you have remote workers, it's very important to have processes like very defined, clear processes. So, and then you can go and have controls and stuff. Other tool that you can have is from the get-go, create a foundation of trust. So the part is the technology and the processes, but part is at the level of human relationship and connection is trust. It's like I work with you and you know what you can count on me. And I know what I can count on you. And I know by when I am going to have this ready. And you know that I'm going to be playing with you for you to win and vice versa. It takes a lot because you can say like in a work session, yes, that we are going to do that. But then we go to the everyday work and then you miss a deadline that affects me and I begin to don't trust in you and so on. So it's a process that is not like one time and that's it. It's a process that it needs to be managed, human to human connection and relationships. It needs to be managed every day. And that is the change of the mindset in the leaderships and the management that makes the difference when you have remote workers. And it makes a difference also when you are physically together because what creates is a peace of mind. Everybody synchronized, going for the same outcome, goals, clear in what needs to get done, and inspired and having satisfaction. It's not just doing. But it has been, like you said, one of the big challenges. Some managers are wondering, is my employee or my team member working? What I am paying for? And then sometimes they come like completely desperate and creates a lot of tension in the relationship. I work with teams like there was one person that was telling me, sometimes I don't even go to the bathroom because my manager is like so stressed out that the moment that she doesn't see me working or sending something, she thinks that I am not doing nothing.
That's
So
a lot of pressure to work under. Yeah, that's a lot of pressure to work under. And, coming back to the question of why would an organization want to do it? And one of the things that it's a wider talent pool, right? If you have administrative roles, they could be done from other states or even other countries. In looking at your background, Gabby, is one of the things I notice is that, your experience has been in working with multinational companies and you're dealing with different cultures, different customs, different ways of being, different ways of behaving. And as I think of, organizations expanding, whether it's within the United States or even outside, even going to a different state is a different environment. I mean, being in California and then contracting somebody in North Carolina may be a different culture and a different experience and a different way of interacting. And how does an organization, a leader, a manager begin to expand into those areas, right? Again, compliance is it's law, compliance, you could look at the law, you could have these experts, but leading, embracing, and diversifying your culture and your workforce, your team, requires a different level of mindset. Is what I'm sensing and finding. How does a leader, an entrepreneur, a manager begin to expand that and to think beyond geographical areas and cultural norms?
First, I think it's creating a culture where the manager, the owner, the president, whoever is the leader in that environment, creates a culture of curiosity. If you are working with people from Russia, from Mexico, from Colombia, from Argentina, it's curiosity and creates, and that means you're going to research what that culture is about. You can have questions, make questions, and create spaces, create occasions, meaning spaces where people can interact. If I am, you are from El Salvador, that's actually last year for the first time. So what I think my connection isn't stable. Do you notice that?
You had a little lapse in your, we left you at, I'm from El Salvador.
Okay, if something happens with my internet, you continue with the conversation. I am okay. I don't know what's going on. So I was just telling you that like we are Latinos, and I knew more about the Salvatorian culture through you and Jose and Senora Irma and all the people in Insurance. It was my first time working with Salvatorians, and sometimes we have certain common things, and many times not. So first, just to be to the point, is like promoting curiosity, interaction, and respect, tolerance, respect, acceptance. And then that is at the level of human. And then at the level of processes is more establishing clear operative practices. It happens to me, I was working in Colombia, and this company was acquired by a Canadian company. And the Canadian company, most of the executives were British. So when you said 10, it's 10. It's not 10, 15, 05, or even 10, 30. And it was the World Cup at that time. And the Colombians were not coming to the meeting. And I began to research with their assistants, and they were watching the one game. And they never were, but culturally that is accepted, because no, it was nothing wrong. It's like, we are watching like in a meaningful soccer game, we are going to be ASAP. Mm-hmm. But for the Canadians / British, that wasn't a lack of respect. So then you need to clean up and so creating operative practices, explicit rules and agreements, how we are going to interact, at what time I can connect with you, like let's do this, let's do that, and that creates that flow in among cultures. Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you, Gabby. And one of the things I've been looking, the insurance industry is a lot about risk management, right? Something bad's going to happen. And over the last couple of years, I've been playing with opportunity management. Sounds a lot lighter, and it focuses, you still deal with risk management. You still deal with the likelihood of a loss or a risk or an exposure, but really the driver is that opportunity that, we're pursuing or going after. And in that part of it is, Oscar, from an employment law, often, employers look like it's a hindrance, right? It's like, oh my God, this is like, I got to comply with that. And now there's all of these different issues. And as we get into employees traveling across state lines or traveling or working from other countries, it gets a little more complex. And what's the silver lining on an organization, an employer, rather than, employment law or regulation being seen as something that's hindering? How does it get turned into an advantage? Because some of these laws I think they're trying to establish fair and equitability across the spectrum, but it's like, how do businesses begin to embrace it from like maybe an opportunity and maybe have a different perception on it, because the rules and the regulations are what they are at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no doubt that if there's a rule you have to comply with, but if you're able to comply in a more efficient way, or you find a way to do it where it works better for you, it gives you a competitive advantage over somebody else. So figuring out how to make it work can give you a competitive advantage. Let's say that you have two companies who have access to the same local labor pool, but one of them figures out how to work with somebody that expands maybe the labor pool of the US, or maybe even the world, where they can outsource some of the work and maybe get a lowering of the labor price. But that company now has an advantage over the other one in terms of labor price, which then kind of flows down the line into the price of a product. So there's definitely great opportunities. And the trick is to obviously comply with the rules, but figure out how to do it better than everybody else. And this gets into, as Gabby was saying, into the mentality of you going into it. If you're going into the remote work with the idea that you're doing it for the employee or because it's the thing to do right now, then you're approaching it, I think, wrong. What you should be doing is ask yourself the question, why are you doing it? And what do you wish to get? And once you get that, it's going to be, we're going to get employee satisfaction. The company is going to have better resources. Then you bring in that management that Gabby was saying and build it into them that there's a benefit, that this is the goal that the company should be following, and make them, instead of telling them what to do, that they become the drivers of the bus, so to speak. So they buy into this process, and now it's no longer something they have to do, it's something that they should do because it's a benefit to them and the company, and that's what they're required to do, whether they're a public company or not. So you want to bring them into the discussion and have them buy into the process, and that gets into the, once that becomes the goal, everybody's looking at, okay, well, Oscar's going to be working remote. How do we make sure that he's not wasting his time? And that's when you get into the stuff that we sort of discussed in the other presentation. You look at the rules, but I think Gabby touched on it, and that is, okay, so, if I'm working in the middle of the night, but I'm turning in my work product in time, and I'm moving the project forward or whatever it is that I'm supposed to be doing, and my manager is happy, it should be okay. In terms of the meetings and the cultural conflicts, businesses have been dealing with that since the Dutch East India companies that were going to different places. So I mean, we're talking about the 1800s. So there's conflicts, cultural and otherwise, but they can be dealt with, and it's about expectation, it's communicating, and but it's a two-way thing. Both sides need to be flexible and nimble on that. So it is a shift in mentality, but if you do it right and you get it right, then you get a competitive advantage, and then you're in a better position than your competitor next door or down the street or whatever. So that's why you have to be thinking about this. Yes, I think insurance, lawyers, we tend to work on the how, but business owners should be thinking on the why. Why is it that we're doing this? And then how to make it happen. And if that answer for them is there is an advantage or competitive or something, then that's why they should be doing it. Not because right now it's this is what we're doing or whatever.
Yeah, I really love what you're saying, Oscar, because oftentimes from a leadership management standpoint, you're looking at, increasing productivity, reducing cost, managing cost, and so forth. Then what I like in what you're saying is like, there's a bigger opportunity here. Yes, it could, you have a wider talent pool, right? You could go anywhere in the US or anywhere on the planet for that matter. And that can mean that you could access certain skill sets and abilities at a different rate than what it costs here in California, as an example, right? And there is that part that you're pointing to is like, wait, go beyond that and really look at what the bigger picture and opportunity is. And what I'm listening to is, or what I'm hearing from you and is you could go into expanding the quality of life for everyone in the process. And understanding the rules or understanding the laws is really the access to that freedom, and to be able to know what you're playing with is similar to, you're going to play basketball. There are certain rules that if you're going to call it a basketball game, makes it basketball. And with that, Gabby, it brings me back to your part is most employers, are, in my experience, awesome with their team members. They care about their employees. They want to do the best by their employees. They want to provide benefits. They want to provide flexibility. And they're always faced with income and expenses, and the thin margins or the profitability to keep the organization going and in reinvesting into it. And there is an opportunity there. Teams that win championships are usually well in sync, connected, synergistic team players that are playing for one outcome, and that's to win a championship. As an entrepreneur or a business owner, there's also those championships that we set for ourselves, be it a milestone in revenue or particular growth or lifestyle or technology that can be brought into the company, or compensation formulas or whatnot. How do you begin to bring this conversation of purpose into the organization and connecting not just the leadership and the management, but also the team members at the ground level, keeping the wheels churning?
So my mind is like going through it. The first things that I want to say is human beings give a lot of importance to money, like money matters. And many people works for money, and it's okay that happens. Like we all need to pay bills. Like I am a single mom, for example. So there is nothing wrong to work for a paycheck. Now, by design, we humans work also to get fulfilled. And that is where the purpose connects. So most people are not just working because they get a paycheck. Most of them, there is something that is getting fulfilled in the work that you choose and the career that you choose. And it's a balance. It's listening your team members, where they want to grow, how they want to grow. And at the same time, having straight conversations about compensation. Big companies, very big companies, have everything structured. So there is not that much choice with the team members to have straight conversations or sitting down in a table discussing something. Some of them had the structure to do that. The small business and medium business still have that opportunity to get that connection with the employee, where not only the business results are the revenue and the business results are fulfilled, but also the persons that are playing in the game are fulfilled. I think we are at a moment already, even in corporate America, where just being productive or efficient is not the game anymore. It's not the only game or the main game. Of course, when you're talking about business, like budget is like the bottom line. If you don't have money, if your company is not making that extra to create, that is all a creation. And that is what I will share as a tool. If you come from the context that is all a creation, and you can have conversations and create certain ways at the beginning to then create another ways to manage compensation, etc. And that's like, if you don't have money or you have more money or whatever, is not related with the purpose. The purpose is the foundation, is what is feeding your soul, hopefully. And you have your employees or your team members connected with that and be alive with that. That is why some employees are like, it's like in Spanish, you said, te pones la camiseta. It's like you're wearing the jersey of your company and you go for it. It's like nobody touch your company, that level. So I think it's a creation and it's a cultivation that goes with creating the experience. And that is a challenge most of the time for business owners. How I manage my revenue and the fulfilling of the critical results in terms of money, my financials, and how I create an experience for myself and for my team members. And it's the creation. It's kind of like when you're having your friends or your date, or I do it with my daughter, like in a dinner, and you create the environment. You create the menu and you put the table and you choose your silverware and you put the candles and you put the music in the background and so on. Business owners do that every day. Most of the time, not that conscious though. It's kind of like we all wake up and then we just go to do the business and we know what to do. But in my work, what I do is to create that level of conversation, like what is your awareness of what is the experience you want to create with the people around you? for yourself and for them. That is the main thing. I don't know
I
if
love
it
what you-
answered your question, but
it does, and it brings to a good point of what's the experience that you're creating as an organization. We often think of experience from a brand experience, right? You drive a fancy car, or you get a fancy suit, or a personalized tailor suit. It's like, what's the experience that you're getting from that brand? And often, I think as organizations, we don't think of ourselves as a brand. We think of ourselves as brands externally, but there's that opportunity to think of our brand experience internally. And this is, I think, Carmen, like the area where you find yourself playing in, because you're in human resources. And, the way I think of human resources often is where the rubber meets the road, right? Is where with the leadership ideas, these purposes or these visions get created, and then they trickle down into the rest of the team and the workforce, and there's compliance and regulation, and you're working where the action is happening and where idea is meeting regulation and reality. And how does, from a human resource standpoint, how do you take advantage of all of this? How do you turn all of these into an opportunity versus obstacles that you got to be walking around or surviving?
Right. So I think, one of the things that has come up, between Gabby and Oscar is around, engaging, and motivating your employees, like keeping them active, keeping them in the know. So I would say that one of the things that you want to focus on as an employer is to involve your team members in decision making, so that you can build that trust. You build that trust. And when they help you or engage in developing the plans, the goals, the end results, then it's more likely that they're going to wear the t-shirt, wear that jersey, like Gabby says, be a part of your team and work with you, instead of for you. And, it's really tough. I mean, look, at the end of the day, we cannot expect our employees to work like we do as business owners, because they're not. However, you can motivate them to, to be a part of the growth and to want to move forward with you. And I think one of the things that, we're seeing now is that employers have to just play a bigger role, in the employees' overall well-being. And that's what employees are looking for. Employees are looking for, does my boss, does my employer, does this company care about my well-being? And so that's something that needs to be taken into consideration. I think another factor is that, leaders now need to start focusing in different areas of the work that they're doing, which is why I think it's so important that there's a separation between, leadership, like upper management, and then those individuals who are actually connecting with the team members. And right in that area is where those managers, or those supervisors need to start tuning into their soft skills. Soft skills, I think was something that we've put behind and or had, it's not something that we were focusing on so much in the past, but I think as a result of COVID, soft skills has definitely been something that we need to focus on more. And it does include motivating and engaging your employees, and how do we do something like that? I mean, it's a matter of some check-ins, whether that be weekly check-ins, sometimes even daily check-ins. I know team members and they love it. They love to have a 5-minute huddle at the beginning of the day. And it works because it just lets everyone know where you're at, what's going on. And that's the kind of stuff is that when you're working remotely, if you don't have those regular check-ins the way you would, I'm dating myself, at the water cooler, or, it's definitely, you're losing an opportunity to stay connected and for your team to really appreciate, your check-ins. Employees know when you're being sincere, and if your check-ins are just like, hey, how are you? Or, a instant message,
Mhm.
Then it's just, okay, here's the regular check-in, but if you ask some really specific questions of your team members, what's on your plate today? What did you succeed, yesterday on? Like, what made you smile yesterday? Like, be very specific in your questions so that they can give you some results. At the end of the day, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for results. And if the results are there, if they're showing up with that, then you have a good team member that's on your side.
Speaking about soft skills, and I think that you're on point with regards to, from human resource, right? But also soft skills from a employment practices liability, workers' comp issues, is those soft skills can make a difference between something getting solved amicably or something ended up in a claim or a lawsuit. And how, from a human resource, how do you define or how do you see soft skills, and how do you take those into the digital space without, we're not in the same space. The water cooler moment, you could walk up to someone, you could see they're standing and you could see their body language and get that if they're in a really excited mood or if they're surviving something. And there's a lot of cues that we get from just seeing body language. How do the soft skills come in, and how do you expand yourself in the digital environment, which is just more of 2D realities, audio and a flat visual?
Right. And I think, it's a matter of like just being able to recognize certain things that are happening. So for example, if, right from the beginning, you, as part of your plan to allow remote workers and to have hybrid work environments, it's, if you designate, okay, when we have meetings, our meetings require you to be on video, for example, right? And now if you start seeing that people, are just not on video, and or maybe there's excuses, or perhaps, they're calling out sick when it comes to, being on certain meetings, check in with them privately. And, hey, what's going on? I noticed that our last 3 sessions or our last 3 meetings, you haven't been on video. Just again, it's that checking in with them. We want to be careful, right? Because, we've like been taught in the past not to get too personal with our team members, but we really are in a different environment today. Our team members want us to ask them how they're doing. Our team members, want to know that we care about their well-being. It's so different today. So it's still, being cautious not to cross that line and to still be professional, but to also wonder and have that curiosity. Is everything okay? So again, just asking the questions is what's going to give you answers. And if they say, no, nothing, everything's okay, I just, didn't do my hair. Oh, okay. So how do you address that? That's like being late to the office. So if someone is late to the office, okay, well, that's something we need to address. And, you've been quote unquote late, 3 times this week. So let's address that situation. And I think that's, the other situation is that being honest and being transparent about your policies. Your policies are your policies, whether your team is in person or, behind the screen like we are today.
Yeah, and it's a, Gavi, you use the term creation, right? It's a created environment, and it's a co-created environment of understandings and agreements that, clarify what performance is or establish what performance is and how it would get measured. It can be a daunting task if this is new, where you're coming into, and particularly if you don't have all of the resources to allocate to it. But I really like what you said in terms of, like, people support a world they're part of creating, right? And how do you begin to invite, if you're in an environment where mostly everybody's an individual and operating as an individual, how do you begin to create the connections and conversations that lead to that trust to develop these relationships deeper, right? Like, how do, from a leadership standpoint, do you begin to open those doors to engage in this new level of co-creation?
Most of the time is having conversations that usually are not done in teams. because business owners just wants to fulfill the task, like individual task. But many times it's these kind of conversations that initiate team work or a team mindset or cohesiveness. It is seen as we are deviating out, like we are losing our time here. Like, what is the purpose of this? The thing is, it's kind of like you are making sure your eggs are, like the whites are completely good, and to make the mousse, because if you just rush it out, because you're just focusing the result, in the long term, it's not going to be as strong and sustainable. So it's an investment, an investment not only in money, but in investment in energy, and in investment in time, to create conversations with your team where you begin to create that cohesiveness. And most of the time it requires what Carmen was bringing in Oscar, trust, building trust, how you bring that. Most of the time is being curious about my team members at the personal level, and at the how it's working for you here, where do you want to go, etc. The other thing is creating vulnerability. If as an executive in a company, I am vulnerable, I have access to create an environment where it's safe to be in communication. If every time Carmen comes to me and says, oh my gosh, I have this problem, I cannot make it work, and I react on you and I make you wrong, and you feel, in Carmen, you have the experience of being diminishing or not acknowledged, or the I am in trouble or whatever, that will not create that environment. So creating teamwork and creating team itself, it requires to develop you as a leader in another level of communication. And it doesn't happen one day to the other, and it doesn't happen one time and that's it. It's that you need to be interested in creating those kind of communications. One of the tools that is very simple and not that simple at the same time is this, like, we as leaders are, I always say this, we are accountable and responsible for the listening that we have. Like, what is my private conversation telling me? The moment that I sit down and I am in front of the Zoom, or I am meeting with someone, we all as human beings have opinions about each other. Every second we have opinions about ourselves, about our environment and our circumstances. And many times those opinions takes over in what, so one of the things that I train and I invite the leaders to practice is to be aware of what are your private conversations. They are not real. They are just the private conversations that come from the past. And then be present of what is my outcome, what I am fulfilling in this conversation. So my private conversation, if I am upset or frustrated or things, it doesn't matter, actually. What matters is what I am creating as a team. And what matters is how I am going to move this conversation forward. And many times we just need to pause and connect with us and connect with how we are going to move our teams to do this. Because I can shut down Carmen, because my private, like Carmen, I am using you as an example, but it's like, that is not creating teams. So there are many ways to create team, but as a leader, one basic tool is, what is my private boss telling me? I am coming from survival. I am worried that I am not going to make payroll. That is a normal, common fear of the small and medium businesses. Like, how I'm going to cover the basics. So survival takes over. And many times there is no or little space to have this level of conversations. And it's a conscious decision, because survival take over.
That's a great distinction inside of where you're coming from. Where are you creating from? Are you creating from survival?
Yes.
Or are you creating from like this vision and purpose
Exactly.
That's
Every
expanding.
time, and leaders is one of, I love that you are bringing that, because one of the things that is very important that helps me to lead my work too, to guide my work, is everything that is going to come out of my mouth is coming from fear or from love. That is like a very easy measure. I am coming from fear or from love. If I coming from fear, I know I am defending, I am protecting, or I am making wrong, I am invalidating you, or something like that. And it's a very, yeah.
I want to interject there. You said
Yes,
two words that, one word that's in the background is vulnerability, right?
yes.
And you use another word right now is love. And in the
Mhm.
business environment, or certain culturally, it's not words that we're normally using or trafficking in. When you think of law, right, you don't think of love and you don't think of vulnerability. And yet it's becoming a really valuable way of being. I'm a fan of Brene Brown, and I've listened to her TED Talk, and vulnerability does open up the door to growth, into expansion, and to connect with another human at a human level, right? But culturally is not, if I look at for myself from a cultural, and it comes out as a weakness, right? It's like you're vulnerable, you're exposing your weakness sort of mindset. And then the word love is one that's, warm and fuzzy, and like, how does it come into the workplace? And this is Oscar, Carmen, I will like how, vulnerability comes into the work environment to open up and access to a new level of co-creating or creating trust or affinity. How does an entrepreneur manager begin to step into these without creating any employment practices, liability issues, or stepping over some employment laws with regards to privacy?
Well, one of the things that a good leader has to do is be attuned to what their workers want, need, and how to give it to them. I think Gabby said, some people work for the paycheck, and motivating those people, it's easy. But not everybody is motivated solely by that. That doesn't mean that money is not important. But as a leader, you have to be aware of that, of what is it that my employees are looking for. And if you're like the owner, you're probably not interacting with the lowest level. You're going to be interacting with somebody in the middle, but you're influencing them and the way they're going to do the work. So you are the example if you are the owner, or if you are the head person. So you have to be mindful of that. And the way you show this vulnerability and all this, it's, to me, it's more care of what the employees want. And if you want someone to actually buy into the team spirit, as Gabby was saying, putting the jersey on, they have to feel they have a stake in the outcome. So you want to be making them part of the solution. And the way the leader does, I'm a nerd. I used to watch Star Trek: The Next Generation, and one of the leadership styles that I really loved about The Next Generation is a captain in that he was definitely the leader, but he always presented problems to his team, and he got his team to contribute to the solution, and then a decision gets made. And at that point, everybody knows what's expected. Everybody had a say. Things got said and rejected, but there was a reason why they're being rejected. We can't do that because this will happen, so we got to try something else. So when you're part of that team, you were part of the goal setting of the goal and the solution. Now, once it gets implemented, that person has a stake in this thing working out. So you want to do that. We spoke earlier about cultural conflicts, and one of my favorite movies that I actually saw when I was in undergrad, taking a business course, anthropology and business. It was weird, but it was. I think the movie's called Gung Ho. It's about a Japanese company, in the 80s, It's set in the 80s, so that's when the Japanese were, everybody was scared that the Japanese were going to take over. Everybody was learning Japanese too. Now it's Chinese. But anyway, the movie actually is about a Japanese company buying an American plant and all the conflicts that happen. And eventually everything shuts down. But it does get into those conflicts. So, you have to, as a leader, set the example and have people buy into the goals of the company. And the way you do it is, every year you set goals. And your people should be participating in that. Can we hit this number? Can we do this? How do you guys feel about this? Make them part of that. And then when that gets achieved on the back end, they get to participate in the celebration and the rewards. So you want to make this thing where they feel like they have a stake. They're not the owners, but they're definitely getting rewards. So that throughout this whole thing, they're your best soldiers, and that's what you should be doing. You're not going to be able to fight all your battles. You want soldiers to be fighting those little battles. They're the ones that are going to talk to the other managers, and then they're going to be talking to the workers. And you want all of them kind of buying into that big goal.
Yeah, you're bringing to mind, world championships, right? And the teams that win at that, and everybody's rising behind that. Like there's a sharing of the win. There's a sharing of how people and everyone gets compensated based on how the team is performing, or at least that's the perception from looking at sports from the outside. We have a question, and I think, Carmen, this would be perfect for you, is what tools would you recommend to allow vulnerability and being a team player with remote workers? Like, how do you begin to bring that into the environment and the culture from a human resource? And how do you define vulnerability, within a work environment in a way that's productive and, elevating the environment?
Yeah, thank you. And I think the question is very timely because I wanted to add to Oscar's thought, when he was talking about leadership styles. Well, to answer that question, then there are also communication styles. And, Gabby mentioned, love and vulnerability. Well, not everyone, is the touchy-feely, so how do you communicate to them? How do you make sure that they are also going to feel engaged and involved and not left out? It's, communication is one way, and empathy. So, everybody can understand that. So one of the things, and one of the tools and resources that I recommend for leaders is to really learn, first of all, your own communication style, and then to learn the communication style of your team members. Because remember, just because we have a particular style, it doesn't mean that our team members are, going to just easily fall into it. We have to be able to recognize what works best for someone. So for example, for me, if you tell me something directly, and even without saying, hey, Carmen, how are you? How was your weekend? I'm going to be okay with you saying to me, hey, Carmen, do you have that report that we talked about last week? And so, you know what? Yes, here it is. Let me send it to you right now. But someone else's communication style is, you might have to say, Gabby, how was your weekend? What did you do this weekend with your daughter? Or, with Carlos, it might be, hey, Carlos, how was that cycling, event you went to over the weekend? Tell me about it. So again, we all have a different style and a different need in order for us to give and get what we want to communicate. So to answer the question is, use the resources that are available to us. Learn your communication style, learn your leadership style, so that you can have better results with your team members, and then engage them. Let them know what you're doing. Be vulnerable, right? How are you going to be vulnerable? The way you're going to be vulnerable is by letting them know, hey, you guys, listen, I just took an assessment, or I just participated in this training. I learned my leadership style, I learned my communication styles, and now I understand why this works for me and why this doesn't work for you. So that's being vulnerable. So the way you do it is you do it by action, being in action. of that.
You know, one of the things that that you do miss, obviously, is that that I've seen in Zoom meetings and just virtual meetings in general, is that when you set up a time, people show up for the time, but when you set up an in-person meeting, people show up 5 to 10 minutes. And that's when a lot of the chit chat, catching up, and all these other things. And actually, even for us, we've seen it that, you know, we join a little earlier. So then we talk about, you know, just, you know, what's going on in our lives. You know, maybe one of the good practices, and this just kind of occurred to me because of what we do, but maybe give yourself, if you set up a meeting, give yourself 5 to 10, and just kind of let people, you know, just kind of talk, kind of say, hey, you know, Carmen, how you doing? Are you going on vacation this summer? Kind of open those things up, because I think one of the biggest things that people who are pushing people to go back to work is that they're missing these interactions, and they're either random throughout the day, you know, water, as you were saying, Carmen, water cooler, but people go to the kitchen, or you get up and you see somebody down the hall. Hey, how was your vacation? Or, hey, you know, maybe build that into some meeting so that you have that interaction, and, you know, give people the opportunity to kind of do that. And be paying attention on that, because you're going to find out, it's like, well, you know, next month I'm actually planning a vacation. I'm going to Hawaii. Okay. Well, at the next meeting, hey, Oscar, you know, how was Hawaii? You know, now I know you're engaging and listening to me. And these are things that people will notice. People will notice when they say, look, I heard you, you know, your kid was sick, or I heard, you know, this thing was going on. People notice that. And I think this is kind of that, that empathy or love, or whatever we want to call it, but this is the things that you know, kind of help people feel like, oh, this is you know, this guy cares, my boss cares, or you know, they don't have to do too much, but at least I know that they're paying attention to what I'm doing.
There
Yes,
one thing that go ahead.
I was just going to say, perhaps open up a, you know, a virtual coffee hour, you know, for 15 or 20 minutes, you know, once a week, or, you know, whenever that works for you, so that you just have a Zoom session that, you know, will open up, you know, on a certain day at a certain time for 20 minutes. And that's exactly what it does. You can even prompt a question in advance, you know, and pop it up there and let people share about that. I'm just thinking, you know, what are some things that we can share with our listeners today?
That is very effective, actually. The coffee hour. I just wanted to say very quick, creating vulnerability in your work environment and distinguishing coming from love in your speaking as a leader doesn't mean that you are going to be a therapist and you are going to be listening to feelings. Actually, it creates the freedom to say, I don't need to be talking about my feelings. Like I talk with my coach or my therapist or my psychologist or whatever. It is more about what Carmen was bringing, distinguishing what is our presence and our way of being and our energy, what is the contribution and the impact that it has. And that is the homework for leaders, and that is the homework for team members too. It's not like it's my leader only, but it creates accountability and responsibility for each human being to distinguish as we grow and expand as humans, to be conscious in what are my strengths, what are my opportunities of growth. I was told many times in my younger, I'm still told that by my daughter, by the way, but in my younger years of my work, like I was too bossy and I was like very effective, but I used to leave dead bodies around me. Because if I am in my mode of producing a result, don't get in my middle. Like, don't get in the middle, because I'm going to just like, are you coming with me, or I will just leave you? That is my automatic way of being. But I learned that has a huge impact. And when you get the impact of your leadership, and what Carmen was bringing was key, your style of communication, then you have the opportunity to transform something, to make a change in your style. When you are standing in, I am the way I am, and people should be dealing with me the way I am. I am not going to change. I don't care. That is, then there will be an impact. We always can choose. And the creation is that, like how we are going to be in communication. And all of this that we are talking happens in the workspace, when we are all together in the same space, and also happens when it's remotely. When we work in different spaces, different time hours, different cultures, we need to deepen into these conversations. And I think the last thing that I wanted to say is, coming from love doesn't mean that you are going to be all like, oh my love, like all kind of nice and with flowers, because I come from love, but I am very rigorous.
Yeah.
Coming from love is, is bringing respect, bringing acceptance, bringing like, I am for you, I am playing with you, and I'm going to have I have the strength to be direct. Love is being direct. I am not talking about like the, oh, you are great, and like the little, how do you call it in English? Like the pat in your shoulder, that kind of cheesy, whatever. It's more of, I am for you. We are building something together, you matter. It's different from sharing feelings and being hours having a coffee, kind of like, how bad was your boyfriend, or how life sucks, or my family, my dad is sick, or anything like that.
And I think, Gabi, you're pointing to, I think, what could be possibly our next conversation, which is really creating an environment. And I think both Oscar and Carmen pointed to that. And a big part of it is like how we show up ourselves. Carmen, you emphasize like, get to know your own leadership style. I think, Gabi, through your illustration of how your leadership style was, at one point in your life, you got to see that it wasn't the most generous or productive way. It was just causing a lot of collateral damage on the side inside of relationships. And you were able to see that and be able to shift that and alter that for yourself. And I think Carmen and Oscar, you both were pointing towards that. The other part that I'm left with is also, how do we create those water cooler moments in a digital environment? Carmen, you suggested those 20 minutes of coffee. I think virtual reality is going to be the next version of Zoom at some point. Zoom is going to be more of virtual reality. So we may have more of different interactions and how
You're dreaming of that, Carlos Alfaro.
or teleporting.
Having us like
yeah.
in your living room.
Oscar mentioned Star Trek and how they right, and so so the imagination is running, but it's also, there are tools that are available now that we could use to enhance where we're headed. But at the heart of everything that I'm hearing is really, we as leaders, managers, and team members create our own environment. We could create a really exciting, fun environment that complies with laws, regulations, and employment standards, and all of those, and really create an environment that's enjoyable for everyone. But it doesn't come from the top, nor does it come just from the bottom. It really comes from, a team being a team, playing to wanting to win a championship together. And they get to define, like Oscar, you pointed to that. What are the goals? What are the metrics? What do we consider a championship at the end of the year or at the end of the decade? And this team gets to put on the jersey and say, yeah, I want to win that championship. But it's really a collaboration of human beings coming together. The last, we have one more minute, and I would like to defer to Gavi, if you could bring us in, close us in this conversation. With regards to, it was really, we looking at it from a leadership and management standpoint and understanding the world of human resources compliance and human, like, where do we leave off and where do we build from here?
I think you should say it. I thought you were closing. One of the things that for me is very important is the awareness of leaders and us as humans, as we go through the day, as we walk or drive in the street even. But it's even more, it's kind of like when you get to be a leader, when you get to create something in the world and to be something, be standing and expending your time and your resources into something that is bigger than you, you are accountable for the experience that you create, not only for you, but for others. So I think that is what is my main message is my main message inside leadership and management. Mhm.
Responsibility and accountability play a big role in all of it. And I want to thank everyone for joining us. We're at 11:30, and thank you for being with us, and stay tuned in our social media channels for our next conversation that'll be happening in August.
Thank
I
you.
can't believe I just said
Thank you.
August.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.